It's great to be here. I want to start this talk by telling you a little story, a story of experiencing extreme emotional highs and extreme emotional lows. And it does have something to do with my talk. It's actually about my last weekend. I was in Spain for a close friend's wedding. Moment of a lifetime. It had been in the works for a year. We'd been building up to this moment to celebrate love. We were there surrounded by friends and family members and other loved ones, and really, the euphoria was just incredible, like finally getting to this moment. I then decided to work remotely. This was in Mallorca, Spain. On the Monday, I was preparing to come here, so I was working on the presentation, trying to send videos back and forth, also managing my workday, etc. But I don't know when the last time was you used the Wi-Fi in a countryside hotel in Mallorca, but it hardly worked. And it was extraordinarily painful and extremely frustrating. And I had gone from this place of being so elated over my weekend to utter frustration, stress, and concern that I was not going to get this done on time because we needed to send everything over actually the week before. I switched even over to my hotspot and it got 3G instead of 5G. And when I reflected on this a little bit, I realized we go through so many times in our life when we're waiting for those big moments where we experience those wonderfully high levels of emotion. But actually there is so much emotion in our day-to-day and so much emotion generated around something, whether or not something simply works. So I'm going to talk to you today about the truth and purpose, and you'll understand later what my little anecdote has to do with my thesis. But first, a little bit about me. My name is Andrew Smith, and I am the Senior Director of Brand at Vinted. In that role, I look over our brand strategy and our product marketing strategy, and all of the content that we create through our wonderful brand studio, and all of the amazing operational managers and producers who make that content a reality. I'm a longtime marketing veteran. I've been in the industry for 25 years, agency side, client side. I moved to Amsterdam to work for an agency, but then ended up as a global head of brand at Booking.com for a number of years. Helped that company go from being a performance marketing company to a brand-infused organization. And then I eventually made my way to Vinted, where I've been for the last couple of years. And one of the reasons why I really love marketing is that it's probably good. Sure, you're very similar to me as you're in the audience, but I'm a very right brain, left brain kind of person. I'm mathematically inclined, but I have a strong sensibility around creativity. I was always the person in high school that would be on both the debate team and hanging out in the theater troupe. So marketing and branding has been a really nice area for me to work in. And I want to speak to you a little bit about my ideas around the truth and purpose. Because perhaps some of you, like me, you're in marketing and branding, we love brand building, but maybe we can sometimes also be a little bit cynical about it. Because the natural tension in branding is that we want to create a perception, but at the same time, we have to reckon with reality. So, and I can tell you that this tension is very important for designing a brand narrative, and it's also really, really important for storytelling overall, is to find this tension and use it as a guide to craft your narrative. So brand purpose, it's a big thing in our industry. Everybody seems to want one. A lot of them are really wonderful, but sometimes they can feel a little bit borrowed, bloated, or even suspiciously elevated. In recent years, brand purpose has kind of become the holy grail of marketing. Every company is looking for one. Every strategist wants to define one. But here's the problem. In the rush to sounding meaningful, many brands forget to become truthful. And this is what we call the purpose paradox. A grand purpose, but a purpose that feels disconnected from the brand's identity or the brand's truth. Instead of it feeling purposeful, it can feel hollow. And this disconnection can really generate a lot of cynicism. So how do we see this? No offense to anybody here who works for Pepsi. Pepsi is a wonderful brand and has been doing amazing things for decades, but sometimes we all make mistakes. There was the infamous Kendall Jenner ad about the protest, And the brand tried to attach itself as a solution to civic unrest, as a solution to racial tension, during a time in the United States when racial tensions were very, very high. They tried to connect their brand to this without any real connection to the product. They tried to connect it to the moment without any real connection to the product, the history, or the community. And it didn't go well. The ad was very performative, not performance-oriented. It landed as not just tone deaf, but it was also truth deaf. And I think, as most of us know, it was pulled from the air shortly after being released. Another example, actually this is one of the reasons why I got into branding, is I was so impressed with British Petroleum's rebranding in the early 2000s, where they went from British Petroleum to Beyond Petroleum. It looked like a transformation. They changed the logo, they changed the name, they adjusted the colors, and they launched a sustainability initiative. But what was the truth? At that time, like less than 3% of their budget was actually going into sustainability initiatives or renewables. The rest went to oil and gas exploration. And just a few years later, they were responsible for one of the worst oil spills in human history, the Deep Horizon that happened in the Gulf of Mexico. So this is what happens when you use a purpose for optics and not substance and not action. You know, the disconnect doesn't just undermine brand trust, it exposes it. And so what's the pattern? Brands confuse aspiration with truth. And when that happens, purpose can become a liability. But some people do this really, really well. I think we all know Patagonia, probably the gold standard for living up to their brand purpose, because they live it through all of their operations. So the truth that they lean into is that they are built for people who care about the planet, and they walk the talk. And their purpose is being in the business of saving our home planet. And you can really see it in everything that they do, whether it's in their product life cycle or their marketing, their operations, and especially their activism. They even encourage people in advertising to buy less, to repair more, and resell their items. They created Worn Wear and donated the proceeds to environmental causes. And I think in their greatest move yet, I think ultimately the company itself will be donated to environmental causes. So the key takeaway is that Patagonia isn't trying to look purposeful, it's acting purposefully. Another case that I love is IKEA, a brand that we all know. They lean into the truth that they want to create a better life every day for the many people. That's their purpose. And this purpose lives in the showroom and even the meatballs and in the instructions that they deliver. So they deliver accessible design, sustainability, flat-packed affordability, circular design initiatives and secondhand furniture buyback programs, and energy-efficient products that reinforce their mission. So the brand's idea to make better everyday life is really experienced in every aspect of what they do. So these brands, I think, really live up to their brand purpose because they don't just perform it, they live it. You can see that they've aligned their purpose with their truth, they're authentic in their delivery, and they have operational depth to how they deliver it. So now let's talk a little bit about Vinted. You're all sitting in front of me, so I presume you all know Vinted. Who knows Vinted? Wonderful. And who here has used Vinted? To buy? To sell? Who used Vinted in the last year? Last month? Last week? Today? Oh, this is amazing. I've done this little survey before, and I don't think I've ever had so many hands held up that they had used Vinted in the last day. Well, a quick history about Vinted. If you don't know it, in 2008, it was founded in Lithuania, literally kind of a startup story of two people having a chat on a sofa during a party. They were trying to figure out what to do with all the clothing that they didn't use, and they wanted to initially trade it amongst one another. So they created a platform and established a community, and this quickly brought in a lot of popularity, and they got funding, and the company expanded. Perhaps expanded a little too quickly, because in 2016, Vinted was almost near collapse. There was one more move to make, which was a Hail Mary campaign in France, but that suddenly started to turn around. France, as our largest market, really helped us start scaling the business. And then the COVID period was also remarkably good for Vinted, as you can imagine, because everybody was home doing the Marie Kondo technique to their closet and trying to figure out what to do with all these items that had value that they no longer wanted in their home. I joined Vinted in 2023, so about a year later, we really started releasing the new positioning of the brand. Repositioning the brand for future growth was my first assignment. We literally started the project on my first day of work. And now today, we're testing that brand. We're putting the new brand to its test because Vinted has expanded to multiple categories, which you might have realized. We're no longer just fashion. You can find electronics, home goods, furniture, musical instruments, I think was launched yesterday. So really, we're becoming a secondhand platform for all things secondhand. So when I first started at Vinted, I had like all sorts of preconceived notions and ideas about what I thought the brand should be. But instead of immediately diving in to find Vinted's purpose, I really went and searched for the truths. I really wanted to find what was true about the brand and true about how people were using it and what motivated them to use us. And two really important things came clear. One is that people feel good about buying secondhand. There's actually something that we call the feel-good factor, because in studies we found that the joy of purchasing something lasts longer when it's something that's secondhand than firsthand. So we knew that there was something emotional in the transaction itself. But the other thing that really stood out, and perhaps the more important insight, is that the motivations for using Vinted were really quite fundamentally economic. People wanted to earn and save money. And so while I might have come in with an idea that we needed this lofty brand purpose and something that was really going to, shape the world, actually, some of the fundamental insights were really economically driven and the little satisfactions in using the product every day. So this is where we started, and we didn't have to invent this. We discovered this through doing the hard work of looking at research, listening to customers, and really trying to pull out the insights that mattered most in our key markets. So after some deep soul searching, we really then started to craft this purpose and look at these insights to think about how could we look at our cultural audience and product truths and figure out how to position ourselves for growth in the future. So we knew that people wanted to live resourcefully, save money, make money, and feel good at the same time. So if I had to summarize our brand positioning in a sentence, it was this: Vinted makes it easy for the world to make the most out of what we already have. A single sentence that tried to pull together a lot of really important insights. So Vinted makes it easy. That was a really important part of our product truth. We could see that we had a functional superiority over our competitors. The product worked faster, it was more reliable, it was more trustworthy, and it was simply easier to use. The world, we wanted to offer people, everybody, a world of products, and so we did not have a specific audience type. It was really, we are a massive technical platform that's really built for everyone. And then to make the most out of what we already have, this is really about that human desire to be resourceful. And ultimately, that way that we feel good in the end of repurposing something, whether we're buying something from somebody else or somebody else is buying something for us. These items have value, and we want to make the most of them, even if we no longer want them in our closet. So you can see we didn't really have to manufacture this meaning. This was all baked into why people loved us, what gave them that joy on a day-to-day use. I mean, some people had that joy today even. We didn't have to manufacture this. We simply revealed it, and we're building it out now with discipline. And the first examples of that are our new brand idea, our new brand platform, New Again. This was launched this year. It's kind of our just do it for Vinted, and it's a creative platform that really is meant to capture a cultural shift that's going on, where people are moving from mindless consumption to mindful re-commerce. It's aspirational, but it's really grounded in what people already know and already love about Vinted. So New Again, it simply gave us a language to talk about something that people were feeling, but that was unspoken. So we seized the opportunity. We took the language, we made it ours, and we're owning it. So here's an example of how we can use this platform to communicate some of the very functional things that people do with our brand. So we really lean into the utility superiority of Vinted, but at the same time fill it with this new again energy that we have found through our brand platform. Can you hear that?
Clear out
I don't think we have sound.
again.
Yeah, okay, we have sound.
Wow, that's so fast again. Earn on the go again. Earn while you go again. Gift from Uncle Lenny again. Weekend money again. One too many again. You again. New again. Sell your pre-loved fashion on Vinted, all with no selling fees again. Don't wear it, sell it.
And then ultimately we made the brand truth operational. A lot of these things leaning into our climate report that we do every year, where we talk about the positive impact that secondhand has on the world, and actually the specific impact that Vinted does, and then down to the individual transactions that you make and the amount of goods that you buy off of Vinted, what that really means in terms of the offset of first-hand fashion, and ultimately the impact on our society. And we're expanding the definition of this, so there's not just about the climate, but we're looking also at like how we benefit society from an economic perspective as well. Because we know so many people are earning money and saving money through our platform, we're helping solve some of the affordability issues that we have in our current culture. So why did this resonate? I mean, for one reason, the new again idea was built off of these simple truths that we knew people were already believing. And so when they saw the language and when they saw the platform and when they're experiencing our communications, it's already resonating with the truth that they feel. But also, it's working because it's not just a brand idea, it's a strategic operating system. So we're not just using it as a tagline, it's actually something that is helping drive consistent thinking between our design, our product teams, and our communications. And so New Again itself can be a strategy and a language that are helping make all of those touch points come into a consistent behavior, or even inspiring the product to develop new features that are based on the emotional connection that people have with the brand and what's in the New Again strategy. So a few lessons for you all. If I had to sort of distill what I experienced so far in the last couple of years at Vinted into 3 simple lessons. So the first lesson is assume less and discover more. So the biggest trap I find in brand strategy, or I have found in brand strategy, and I've fallen into this trap myself in previous jobs, is that you think you know. The biggest trap is thinking what you already know. A lot of times when you really look into the insights, you find some surprising behaviors, and you find some surprising aspects that can lead you to some unexpected ways in which you can make your brand strategy. So when I looked into a lot of these insights about what motivated people to use Vinted, I came across some really interesting ones. So one thing is, people don't just like to earn money, they like to sell their things really quickly. And there's we look at the data for why people, who's selling faster or slower, but actually a lot of those day-to-day emotional highs, it comes from the speed at which people can sell. So this is a woman in Scotland, a very active Vinted user, who wanted to test some methodologies for selling her items faster on the platform. So she decided to model all of her items on a life-size cutout of Danny DeVito, and it worked. She was selling faster than ever. She was extremely happy, and I believe if you look hard enough, you'll find this wonderful profile, this wonderful closet, as we would say, on Vinted. The second lesson would be to build the brand from what it is, not from what you wish it were. So aspiration can sometimes cloud judgment. So I can also tell you honestly, when I first joined Vinted, my assumption, my way in was thinking, we're going to build the brand on sustainability. This is what the brand is about. Vinted exists to help solve the climate issues, to help solve our waste problems, etc. And I have to say, it's not that Vinted doesn't exist for that, But the primary reason why Vinted exists is to help people save money and earn money and feel smart. This is what people ultimately want from the platform. You know, kind of when I was describing the dichotomy between the wedding and my workday in Spain, like there is definitely this bigger idea and this bigger purpose for what we can be about. But where the strategy has to start is what people are experiencing day in and day out. So of course, we can make this positive impact. We can make people feel good, but their fundamental motivations for using us are economic. And so that's what we really needed to amplify. But you know, of course, just telling people you can earn money on Vinted, that can get to be a fairly tired message over time. Like we then need to really look for new and creative ways to uncover that message. And so more recently, we've done a campaign within the New Again framework that kind of talks about how people are mini Vinted executive officers, we would call them, when they become sellers on Vinted.
This is all about the grind. But with Vinted, it's more of a cruise. Sorting inventory, maximizing potential, and closing the deal. Again and again. Is it only selling secondhand? Or is this the start of your empire? Sold again, new again, all with no fees. Don't wear it, sell it.
So New Again's working hard for us, like in terms of being a hard-working platform. It helps us frame basically what sellers can do on Vinted with all of their different items. It helps sort of position the seller as like a mini entrepreneur. But there is more. I would say the lesson 3 that I have to impart is that truth is the starting point of aspiration. So it's not at all that we lack any sort of grand aspiration, that we would like Vinted to stand for something much larger. It's just that it's rooted in these fundamental truths that I've just talked to you about. You know, the big ideas shouldn't come out of thin air. They should really be positioned in what is completely true and defensible about your brand. So once we were like clear on people's realities, we could then start to really think about what more the brand could be. And we accepted the fact that brand love is born out of this utility. That is what makes us love. People love using our product. It works really well. It's fast. It's rewarding to use. You know, the emotional resonance of feeling good and doing good, this was built on the foundation of our product and the result of people using our product. So we had to look at New Again and thought about, you know, does it work for the most fundamental thing that we do? Listing a product on the platform. And you can see the language and the meaning and the message, like it works. You get the idea that we're making a product new again. But can we also use it against lifestyle situations? And can we start to evoke how people feel when they have that feel-good moment of buying something secondhand? When they've bought something and it's new to them, even though the item has been owned before. And then what if we laddered this up to the ultimate aspiration and the bigger impact that if everybody used Vinted, the bigger impact that could exist? And we felt like, yeah, that also kind of starts to feel pretty right. And that's how we ladder up to this much larger aspiration. And so we're not kind of trying to mask anything about who we are or what we do by creating a grand purpose that somehow sounds wonderful but feels disconnected. It's actually very logically built from the start point of what our product truth is, to the emotional experience that we give our community, to the biggest aspiration that we could possibly have. So, I have a question for you, at least for those of you who work within brands or work on brands as marketers. I'm sure most of you are. Like, what's something that's a powerful truth about your own brand? Think about it for a second. It doesn't have to be sexy. It just has to be true. Like, is there a way in which your product or service gives people value? And is it solving a real problem, like a day-to-day problem that's connected to their emotional state within that day? How does it make your customer feel? And then can that truth be laddered up to something bigger? It's kind of noisy and you all have headphones on, so I'm not going to call on you, but does this help anybody think about how they can connect their product or their brand to something that's bigger? Yeah, it's a logical process. So I guess what I'll leave you with is just a kind of a statement that I typically make, is that purpose may inspire, but it's truth that ultimately earns belief. And so I encourage you all, when you think of strategies or when you work with your clients, to really dig into what those truths are. It's not that they can't ladder out to something that's bigger and more purposeful. They'll only make that purpose a lot more believable. Thank you very much.